Health and healing. This video is no rants involved this time. This is my experience only. I don't give any prescriptions and I don't really give any recommendations except from my own experience. You can take it or leave it. And the thing about natural healing, which is what I'm talking about, natural health and healing practices, techniques, therapies, you have to do yourself. Primarily, for the most part, because there is no U.S. healthcare system. It's medical care. Medical care by licensed medical doctors who have gone through medical school and learned what they're supposed to learn so that they can pass the exam. The medical care system is essentially a monopoly. It was designed that way from the get-go by Rockefeller-financed Flexner Report around 1910. The early 1900s were the era of monopolistic practices, and the medical care profession was designed to be a monopoly from the get-go. Rockefeller financed what is now known as the Flexner Report. And he chose the brother of a big deal medical doctor at Johns Hopkins, which he supported financially and still does as far as I know. Anyway, Abraham Flexner was Simon's brother, and he worked for Carnegie, Andrew Carnegie, in the days when Carnegie Steel and other smaller steel companies were put together by Morgan and Schiff as U.S. Steel. Monopolistic practices throughout, just like is going on in electronics and technology today. Nothing new there. That monopoly was finally broken legally in the late 1980s by the Wilk trial, the chiropractors against the medics, and it was settled in favor of the chiropractors. But no money changed hands, so nothing really changed, except medical doctors quit calling chiropractors quacks, maybe. Anyway, the medical protocols enforce what the drug companies and the specialist groups want. If you get out of line with the protocols, you can be struck off and your career ended. So doctors have to follow the protocols or so are the consequences. And I have personal experience of that just recently when I asked the medical doctor I had to consult for a prescription for ivermectin, which you may or may not know was pretty popular during COVID-19. It seemed to be pretty effective. Anyway, he was very hesitant about that, and I let him off the hook because the protocols do not allow him to prescribe it, and it is not available over the counter in this state yet. It is in some states, and if I really wanted it, I could probably get it from one of them. But it is the protocols which govern how you're treated if you see a medical doctor. And I haven't for years. I have no personal physician and don't want one. I am my own physician, my own experiments, my own lab, my own results, and have for 50 years and more. I never trusted the medics because I read when I was 13 about the Flexner Report. I knew about that a long time ago. So if you want health, you're going to have to do it yourself. Or you can study, you can read books, you can go to school, you can take seminars. There's a lot of YouTube videos available, and you'll have to learn on your own who to trust in them, because there's all sorts of people. Webinars, probably, but I don't know nothing about them. The real rule in do-it-yourself is, first, don't hurt yourself, and second, start and don't stop. Health is not a destination. It's a process. Now, my experience starts back in 1974 when I was a merchant seaman. We came back into New York, docked in New York, and I went to a bookstore down on Lower Broadway called Weezer's at that time. I don't know whether it's still there or not. Weezer's, and I bought several books there on healing and Zen and meditation. I was getting into meditation at the time. And I bought a little paperback called Buddha is the Center of Gravity, put out by Lama Foundation in New Mexico. This was long about October, middle of October. In December, I was out in New Mexico at their Rohatsu, a Christmas season session, they're called. And that was my first experience in sitting. Zazen, it's called. Anyway, from then to about the next 2-3 years on and off, I'd go to sea and come back out there. Give me a break. Well, so much for that. Anyway, I got into seated meditation along about 74, and I started feeling jittery early on. So I knew I had to do something, so I looked around and I got into yoga type stretching, hatha yoga. Now, I've never practiced yoga with a group at all. I don't really believe in hatha yoga too much. I like their stretching, and I like their positions, some of them, but I don't practice hatha yoga. That's physical yoga to my mind. The highest is Raja Yoga, from what I understand, and that gets into the spiritual aspects, which is what I was interested in at the time. And I've practiced that on and off over the years. But the best natural therapy that I know anything about, that I've used for over 50 years, is acupressure. And I read up a little bit on that and practiced a little bit, and it works. If it didn't work, I wouldn't do it. That's been my whole philosophy of natural healing for years. Read about it, try it out. If it works, keep doing it. If it don't, quit. Find something else. But I did acupressure on my own. I've never studied with anybody in particular. Books mainly, now internet. There's a lot of information out there. Reflexology is kind of acupuncture for the feet with I understand it's kind of a spiritual twist. But I've never done that. I work on my feet every day. That's important, but the reflexology I don't know anything about. There's also a branch called auriculotherapy, which is acupressure done on your ears, or it can be acupuncture too. But I'm not much for needles, never have been. So acupressure works. I can testify to that wholeheartedly. I do it every day and sometimes multiple times a day if I feel like I need to. Acupressure and acupuncture involve the meridians and the points on those meridians which are important. Any kind of pain or funny sensations typically come from stoppage or blockage of one or another point. Like I say, I've never studied it formally, and I probably should have, but there you go. But that works. I could recommend that. Well, I said I wasn't going to do that, didn't I? But that I can testify that it works. Chiropractic is useful early on. The chiropractors seem to think that it's a heal-all, and it is pretty effective, but mainly for freeing up your spine. To get your spine, the spine is very important. Freedom of movement in your spine, especially low back and neck. And there is a certain connection between chiropractic and chakra theory, if you know what that is. There is a certain connection there. The chakras are important points in the physical body for energy to rise up from the root chakra to the crown chakra at the top of your head. For the Kundalini, it's called, energy to rise. And there are certain nerve plexuses in the body that kind of correspond to those chakras. And if you get into chiropractic, free up your spine and work with acupressure, you will probably learn to see that for yourself. I don't know, but that's up to you. Exercise. I have never liked running or weightlifting. Walking is my preference, and I've always enjoyed walking. So I do that when I can, especially uphill these days. Short jaunts uphill and downhill. Diet and nutrition are very important. And you'll have to sort that out for yourself. Because my diet and nutrition ideas have changed quite a bit in the last 5 or 10 years. Primarily because most food that you buy in stores, whether canned or fresh or frozen, are typically GMO, genetically modified organisms, using Roundup, which is a weed killer, pesticide, with glyphosate, it's called. That's the active ingredient. And about anything you buy in the store is GMO with glyphosate, so they're poisoned. That's my rant for the day right there. But if you know anything about geoengineering or weather warfare, for example, from geoengineeringwatch.org and Dane Wigington, you know and understand that the entire environment is poisoned. From the ground up, the water, the air, everything is polluted and dying. So you have to be very careful about what you eat. So I have, in the past years, I have gone increasingly to organic labeled, but I still read labels for ingredients. But I try to stick primarily with organic labeled foods. But even there, you're not completely safe because there are tests that I've seen online indicating that some of those are infected with glyphosate, especially grains. My understanding is that grains today, whether GMO, organic, or what, is all dried with Roundup. So they're all poison from my perspective, and they are killers. So I try to stay organic in everything. And my diet has become increasingly devoted to herbs and spices because traditionally they were used for healing. Now they're used for flavoring, essentially. But I use them every day. But you'll have to look up and find out the ones you need and the ones you use. Along these lines somewhat is hydroxychloroquine, which was recommended back during the pandemic against coronavirus. And I can testify that my own homemade hydroxychloroquine is the best remedy I have ever seen for multiple dysfunctions that I feel from time to time. And today I take it as a preventive in the morning and in the evening before I go to bed. And typically before I go outdoors and when I come back from outdoors, like shopping, because the flu viruses are being sprayed on us, and the air and the water and the land is poisoned with it. So you can go outdoors. You don't have to be in contact with anybody. You can get. And I have felt the first symptoms of flu. Headache typically starts, then nasopharynx, the back of your nose. And if you let that persist, it'll get into the throat and on down into the lungs and bronchi. But I try to stop it in the head, and anytime I feel symptoms of a headache coming on, that's the first thing I'll go to, and typically that will stop it. I have never seen anything that even comes close to stopping, typical flu symptoms. Vitamin C I've always taken before, and it works over time. Heat, that helps. But this stuff stops all that crap right in its tracks. I mean, fast. So, there is a recipe online that you can find for making your own, and that's what I started with. I saw it first of all at rense.com, rense.com, in their archives now. And at the time it called for quinine water that you can buy in any grocery store. typically. And I tried that the first time until I looked at the ingredients and it listed high fructose corn syrup, and I immediately stopped because high fructose corn syrup is a no-no to me. And I read labels anymore. If I can't find something organic, I will look and see if it's got high fructose corn syrup. I don't get it. To me, it's a poison. But I can testify that homemade hydroxychloroquine works. I call it QT, and it is a cutie. Along these lines for natural healing, any cuts I get, I treat immediately with hydrogen peroxide. 3%, you can buy it in any drugstore, any grocery store probably. And I'll use that. If it's bad enough, I'll wash it with soap and water, of course. And then I'll treat it with hydrogen peroxide until it quits foaming and stinging. And then I'll just leave it alone out in the air. Or I will put a little Bag Balm on it. I found Bag Balm years ago. It's in a farm and garden store. You can buy it there. And I use just a little dab on it, and that seems to speed up healing. Plus, I'm doing all kinds of vitamin C during the day. Vitamin C powder, I put it in my potions with all my herbs and spices and other odds and ends that I want to try. And I found out too that vitamin C is probably the best natural laxative you can buy. If you drink enough vitamin C water, you will develop watery stool. And so you just back off from that. That's the only side effect I've ever seen from it. Plus it really speeds up healing of skin and wounds. Very effective. A lot of vitamin C. And vitamin C and hyaluronic acid I take as a cancer preventive because cancers secrete hyaluronidase, which dissolves the intercellular cement, it's called. Cancers don't invade, I should say, cells. They grow along the intercellular cement, secreting hyaluronidase as they go. So, taking hyaluronic acid and vitamin C, which are two big constituents of the intercellular cement, I think it acts as a cancer preventive. Plus, Dr. Linus Pauling years ago won a Nobel Prize for his work with vitamin C, and he and a Dr. Cameron from Scotland worked using very high levels of vitamin C and hyaluronic acid to combat cancers. Because cancer and some of these systemic diseases can bankrupt people. Natural remedies typically are fairly inexpensive, but they work, which is why I use it. Prevention is the best cure, I heard in the 7th grade from a kid who was supposedly retarded, and we were doing a contest on who could come up with the best slogan for medicine. And he won. I've never forgotten that. That's my working hypothesis right there. If it works, do it. If it don't, forget it. And once you find the best, forget the rest. What else? Oh, for skin, I use white vinegar anymore. It's slow, but it will take off warts, and it will take off these little red kind of blood blisters on your skin. It works. So I use it. Plus, it'll stop a lot of minor itching. But itching too can be a symptom that one of your acupressure points is blocked, and so I use pressure there as well. To me, there is no such thing as ordinary aches and pains. And for older guys, there is no such thing to me as BPH, benign prostatic hyperplasia or hypertrophy. Ain't no such thing. I don't know nothing about it. And you'll have to find out your own remedies on that, but I can testify that they're out there. All you got to do is test. So, with all of this in mind, the idea is, I call it, I've seen it too, the health triangle. At the base, to me, is flexibility and strength. The peak is balance. You start and don't stop, and you do no harm. You do not hurt yourself doing this stuff. There is no hurry. You're going to have to do it the rest of your life. So take your time and get it right the first time. My practice these days is meditation and prayer, morning, noon, and night. Attitude of gratitude, you've heard that called. Thanks. Thanks to the Father, thanks to Yeshua, thanks to Holy Spirit, thank you to everyone. Forgiveness is vital. Yeshua says if you don't forgive, you cannot be forgiven. And frankly, I don't want to carry all them people around on my back anyway, or in my head. So every time anything ever comes up about regrets or anger or irritation with somebody or something, I forgive it mentally. I don't think you have to go and talk to anybody about it. Forgive them in your head and they forgive you, and you just go on to your highest good. That came from a stay in Miami years ago. The apartment I lived in was across the street in Unity, and I read about forgiveness in one of Catherine Ponder's books, and it works. You have to forgive, and you have to be grateful. There is no doubt in my mind that what Yeshua said about the kingdom of heaven being within you, there's no doubt in my mind that that is so. My life has been a series of dead ends. And every time I've come to a dead end and I've decided for some reason or other I wanted to go in a certain direction, the doors opened. Every time. And they still are. That's the reason for these videos that I'm putting up. They're not for you. They're not really for me. They're to pay off debts I owe and promises I've made to Yeshua, to our Heavenly Father, to the Holy Spirit. So I don't really care whether you listen or not. It's none of my business what you do, really. You stop and think about it. What I do, what I think, say, or do is my responsibility. Your reaction to it is yours. And that's just the way it is, as I see it. So use your own judgment. And it's not just physical. It's heart, soul, mind, and body. And once you start, don't stop. That's all I really want to say. I don't want to really get into a rant anymore. I hope I didn't come across ranting here. That was not my intention, whatever. To tell you, to relate to you my own experience, and wish you all the best, whatever you do. May the good Lord bless and keep us all. Bye for now.